Hey, good morning. We are live.
Good morning. This is Scott.
And Lane, another SNL show Friday morning at 9 a.m. We love doing these, and this week's going to be a really fun episode as well.
Welcome to the show this week. We're going to be talking today about a trend that's returning to the marketplace. Everything comes full circle in real estate.
Absolutely. I mean, there's different. So before we get into it, there's a lot of difficulties maybe if you're a buyer in today's marketplace. It's very competitive, especially if you're looking at a higher price point. You might have a home to sell to use the equity in that purchase or in that sale to buy. And when you're buying not in a contingent environment, it's really, really difficult to get an offer accepted. Sometimes you have to be non-contingent. So are there different options available? Are there different options available for the buyer? Is there different options available for the seller? So we're going to talk about creative options that we're going to be seeing maybe coming up here, if not already seeing. I know Philip on our team seeing some stuff. So we're going to talk about stuff, maybe some unorthodox options that you might not have heard of.
I think Lane's absolutely right. And what we wanted to do today is just kind of expand the mindset a little bit. That's what we're all about, is creative options to get buyers and sellers together. And the key on every transaction is that it is a win-win. Many times people think, well, one side is going to lose, and that's not how it works. It can be a win-win. The buyer can still get the price and terms that work for them, and the seller can still feel like they've won by getting the highest price and terms that work for them as well. I think that's one of the key factors with putting all of these options together. It's creating the end result that works for both parties, and that's what creates a smooth transaction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's the first option that we're going to be discussing today?
Let's take a look.
Lease-to-purchase options.
And this is a term that takes me all the way back to 1988 when I first started in the business. We know Lane wasn't even a twinkle in his mother's eye at that point in time, but these were fairly popular back then, and we did a fair amount of them, and they've always been something that kind of percolates in buyers' minds. I have to tell you, every year we'll have buyers that ask us about, gosh, we love this house. We're maybe 6 months, a year away from actually pulling the trigger, from having the funds for the down payment. Is there a seller that would perhaps allow us to sign a contract where we have a lease for a certain set period of time, and then we exercise a purchase option at the end of that lease?
Now, Scott, with your permission, may I read the Investopedia definition on rent to own?
I want you to do that right now. I was just giving the 30,000 foot view, and I knew Lane, Lane is our analysis guru. Of course, he would have the definition handy. Thank you, sir.
I have to have the definition handy. So a rent to own agreement in which you rent a home for a certain amount of time with the option to buy it before the lease expires. Rent to own agreements consist of two parts: a standard lease agreement and an option to buy.
Perfect. Shall we elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely elaborate that. Basically, when I first started maybe 8 years ago, I started seeing these a little bit more where, maybe a buyer doesn't have a down payment, or they need to come up with some creative financing options to be able to own, but they know that they want to own down the road. So they set up some sort of a lease agreement, and you can do it in a couple of different ways. You can set up the lease agreement to where that monthly rent goes towards the down payment. You have basically the first right of refusal to buy when that lease expires. So what the benefit of the seller is maybe they can charge a little bit of a premium lease, knowing that they're going to be selling 2 years down the road. And they have to, sometimes you might be thinking, does the price need to be set on the lease agreement? And that might not always be the case. Yes, you can probably do that, but also you can put something in the lease agreement to where you can set the price at the market price when the lease expires. So that way, you love this house, you want to purchase this home, but then the seller doesn't want to undersell it. And the seller wants, if it's a seller's market like it is right now, maybe they don't feel like they don't want to, price it under, and they want to make the most that they can from the sale.
Absolutely. And I think the key on something like this is that nothing is set in stone. All of the things that we're talking today are flexible. It's one of those things where it's literally a buyer and seller and their agents getting together on a Zoom, probably these days on a Zoom call or on a virtual conference table, and you just kind of hammer things out. For any of these types of things to work, you have to kind of have a meeting of the minds, and there has to be a reason why the individual plans can work for each side. And Lane's talking about the buyer side. Why would a seller want to do a lease back? Well, one of the things is, if the home has been an investment property, maybe the seller is waiting to have there's a certain time frame in which they need to sell to realize certain tax benefits or whatnot, and they're they need to hold on to the home for another 6 months or another year to be able to realize those benefits, but yet they've already decided where they want to move for the next house. If this was an owner-occupied home, for example, so they're willing to move out, they have the wherewithal to move on to the next page of life, but for whatever reason, their timing isn't there to sell the house right now. And so this will often be something that can work for them. They get a good tenant in the house, paying a premium. And as Lane mentioned, we have caveats in there that protect them from a market downturn, or an upturn. Sometimes if the market were to go down, you think, well, gosh, the buyer is going to go out. You can actually have ceilings or floors, if you will, with regards to if there's a bit of depreciation as well. So again, you've got to have a buyer that really, really loves the home and wants to have the home. And as always, there's some risks involved. There's going to be some outs for that buyer. So you've got to realize, if the purchase were not fully executed, have you received enough benefit in that interim time to have made it worthwhile?
Yeah, and I'm not an attorney, but my best piece of advice, if you're going to go this option, is get everything, no matter what detail, large or small, in writing. Make sure it's in writing. So in almost every scenario that you can think of, it has been addressed. So that way, if you do come across that particular scenario, you know how to overcome it, and whatever is in writing is what's going to be executed.
Absolutely. I think that's the key. The key is everything is in writing up front. You line out, no matter which side you're on, buying or selling, you line out all the pros and cons as to why this may or may not work for you. And let's be very clear on all of these options that we're talking about today. This is probably representing less than 5% of transactions, maybe even less than that. However, for that buyer and seller where it can work, it can mean everything.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to the next one.
Absolutely.
Bridge loans. Bridge loans are creative. So at the beginning of the show, I was mentioning how when you get to like a little bit of a higher price point, a lot of buyers maybe need to sell the home that they currently own to use the equity from that sale to purchase their upleg. And that when you're in a competitive marketplace like we're in right now, contingent offer through. So there are a lot of financial institutions, even our company has options to give you what's called a bridge loan, which basically is a temporary loan to bridge the gap of what you need to be non-contingent. And then when you sell your home that you currently own, then you use those proceeds to pay off the bridge loan. And that's the best way that we can think of right now to be able to get you to submit offers non-contingent, and the best chance that you can get offers accepted in a competitive marketplace like we are in today.
Absolutely. And the key to remember with this is understanding where the marketplace is. Right now, if you find your dream home and you're contingent on selling your current home, despite the magic that Lane and I and Philip and our team can perform for you as a buyer, and how our success rate of getting offers through is higher than about anybody out there, a contingency on a sale is still a red flag and a very worrisome topic for potential sellers. So that's why the bridge loans are expensive. Are popular. They are expensive. You're going to have to be willing to pay for them. But for that buyer that just says, gosh, I've got to figure out a way to be competitive and I have not sold my house yet, it's an option. Are your interest rates going to be at a premium? Absolutely. I'm sure Lane has some stats on that as well for us.
As far as the interest rates being at a premium, yes, they probably are. But guess what? If you have a house that's very sellable and you know that your house is going to sell within the first couple of weeks anyways, let's say you're paying 10% or something like a very high, I just use a very high interest rate there, but let's say you are paying 10%. If you only have it for 30 to 60 days, it's probably not going to be that much money in the grand scheme of things, because guess what? Like if the way homes are appreciating today, let's say they're appreciating 4 to 5% year over year. If you didn't do that bridge loan, the house is going to be more expensive anyway. So you're probably actually going to save money doing the bridge loan, even on a higher interest rate, than if you waited the 2 months to maybe throw a rent back or something like that to buy the home, because then it's already going to appreciate a certain amount in value anyway. So the home just got more expensive if you waited 2 or 3 months to purchase down the road.
See, Lane, as always, that's a fantastic point, and he brings it right down to an analytical level. So it's literally looking at the options and understanding that the bridge loan is going to be for a short period of time, often just 3 months. So even that 10% rate annually, you think, oh my goodness, that's ridiculous. This is not a payment that's going to be set in stone or a payment that you're going to be having. It's simply a bridge. And I think that's the key to remember. If we're thinking about a bridge loan, it's a bridge. We're bridging the gap between the two ends. And it's analyzing it, bringing it right down to the objective and say, if I were to do this, I carry it for 2 months. What's my out-of-pocket cost going to be? I carry it for 3 months. What's the out-of-pocket cost? Take it all the way out to a worst-case scenario to 6 months. I always am a big fan of figure out the worst-case option, the worst-case scenario with any plan that we're looking at and say, if that were to happen, could that work for me? And I'm going to just segue for a minute here. When we had the meltdown in 2008, literally we all melted down in some ways or another. And I went back to some of my old Dale Carnegie CDs. And those of you will know Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends, Influence People, back in the 30s. It was a milestone book, and his organization still thrives today. One of the things that I've taken from that time is always when you have a scenario, fast forward to what do you think is the worst case outcome from that. Get wrapped around your head how you prepare for that. 95% of the time that will never happen. But if you do that, it just gives you a sense of calm and peace figuring out the rest of it. So that's that's just a side tip for today that I found extremely valuable in my life. And I think on anything we look at, just figure out what's the worst case, the longest term possible. Does that make sense to you, Lane?
No, that makes sense. And I was thinking, you just mentioned how I'm analytical. I was thinking, let's say it's $1 million house and it appreciates on average 5% every year. What is that? $50,000 in a year as far as appreciation. And let's say you need 500,000 and the interest rate is 10%. It's still $50,000 in a year. So you basically, the amount of money that it costs you to do this bridge loan is the same amount of money that the house is appreciating in value anyways. And knowing that being a contingent buyer is practically impossible in today's real estate environment, it's probably worth exploring that bridge loan option because it's going to end up evening out anyways. So if you needed to wait 2 or 3 months to be able to buy, your house is going to be more expensive based on 2 or 3 months worth of appreciation. And then if you went the bridge loan option and you have to pay a little bit, but get the house now, it's going to be a wash at the end based on those numbers.
A couple of things, Lane, too. Also, talk to us about how qualifying for a bridge loan, what does qualifying for a bridge loan look like? Because again, if I'm correct, we're going to have 2 mortgage payments for a period of time, correct?
Yeah, and you know what? That financial institution is probably going to look into how much equity you hold in the home, how sellable your house really is. They're going to probably do some sort of a walkthrough to determine the upgrades and determine the price that you're setting and the equity, the whatever loan amount you have left in. And you still have to do some sort of an escrow process. And there is a lien put against the home for it to be paid off. But if your house is sellable, if you do have equity, if it's not broken down, and you're going to pass the in-person inspection, you're going to be able to prove to that institution that you have equity in the home that you can use to buy. And the process, even though it seems complicated, it's actually relatively simple, and we can kind of walk you through all that.
Absolutely. And the second thing I wanted to add to this, and it ties into the first topic that we talked about too, the lease purchase options. We always advise that you talk to your tax, your accounting professionals and so forth, but start the conversation with the Sackin-Stone team. Start it with us. Let's lay out the ideas. We can help you get the ball rolling. We also have referral sources that we can refer to you that are the experts in each of the individual fields, if indeed you don't have those people kind of in your back pocket or in your arsenal. But start the conversation with us, and we will have enough information, enough knowledge, again, to get started.
Absolutely. Okay, what's the next topic? New home builds.
Who doesn't like new houses? My gosh, it takes me back to Phillips and my early days together when we were getting home decorating ideas. We loved to tour model homes. I mean, this is, and you get excited and you think, gosh, these are amazing. The builders spend hundreds of thousands of dollars creating beautiful vignettes and models, all decorated and furnished for you to go through. And of course, to get you excited so that you want to purchase a product that's not even built yet. And it's, you look at a piece of dirt. But new home builds are not as prevalent as they once were, especially here in Orange County, because we're getting built out. But as we move forward into this topic, we are seeing in Lake Forest, in Rancho Mission Viejo, for example, in South County, in West Huntington Beach, believe it or not, just near the Bolsa Chica wetlands, we have new builds going on. And in Costa Mesa, we have what are called infill new builds, which are commercial areas that are being redone and adding kind of urban vertical style living. So the builders are getting creative. They're using what land is left in Orange County, and we feel this is a topic that definitely needs to be visited today. And Lane has been showing our buyers a lot of new home builds lately, so I'll let him move on and give us some tips and tricks and things to watch for.
No, new home builds are really popular still, and we get asked that a lot. I mean, Orange County is relatively built out, but there are still some areas where builders are building new homes. You see a lot in South Orange County and like the Rancho Mission Viejo space. We actually have the Huntington Beach the Shea builders in Huntington Beach. They're releasing their current phase that will be ready in July, and they have some current move-in readies. Actually, maybe like 2 or 3 of them left right now. But when you go tour a new home build, there's a couple things you want to look out for. One, obviously, Scott alluded to, the models are absolutely beautiful. They go with the most upgrades you can possibly think of are put into those models. So your home at the end of the day is probably not going to look like the model home. You do have the option to add a bunch of upgrades, and you have to pay for them though too. So they're basically going to give you a starting price, and you have to add in a bunch of upgrades when it's all said and done. And then also, if you have any sort of front or backyard space, it's going to be left with dirt, and you're going to be responsible within a certain amount of time frame to be able to finish off the landscape. And that would, based on if you're in an HOA, there are probably going to be HOA rules that it has to be done in a certain amount of time. So you have to be prepared to not only finance and get a loan and come up with a down payment to purchase it, but you're going to have a little bit of cash reserves on hand after you close to be able to do some of those upgrades in the backyard, or maybe some finishes as far as the lighting fixtures, because not everything is completely done and finished as you do see in some of the models. Even though if you wait till the very, very end, those models are going to be available for purchase, but based on a premium. You just have to be prepared for that. Now, a couple different things too. They have a financing program where every builder is most likely going to have a preferred lender. And if you go with their preferred lender, you can get up to I've seen most recently $25,000 worth of credits towards your upgrades. So that definitely helps if you do qualify with their preferred lender. Obviously, make sure you're getting the best fee and cost structure when it comes to your mortgage rate and your cost for that loan, which I've seen typically they've been really competitive. But the benefit of using their preferred lender is you do get a bunch of credits towards your upgrades. One other thing too is you're able to have some sort of buyer representation. So if you need some help and you need somebody that's in your corner, we can definitely help you purchase a new home build. And we definitely recommend that you do so too, because obviously if you go straight to the builder's going to maybe not tell you everything and what to know and what to expect. One thing that they tell you is obviously you can have your inspections with the new home builders, and you can walk through with them, and maybe they're purposely not going to show you some things, or maybe they're not qualified licensed home inspectors. But we recommend, and that's one thing that we're here, and we bring our inspector in to do a home inspection. We found things in the past like the furnace not operating properly, and we're able to get $5,500 worth of credits. And there was another case where we saw these tiny little scratches on a home inspection on the windows and sliders that the builders might not have pointed out to you. But because we were there, we were able to get all the windows and all the sliders in that home completely replaced. So definitely have somebody in your corner. Definitely bring in a buyer representation. You have to bring your buyer representative on the first visit. So if you are planning to tour the homes, make sure you have your buyer representative with you on that first visit. Scott, I know I've been speaking mostly on these new home builds, so I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to bring up that I left out, but there's a lot to think about when you're buying a new home.
There's a lot to think about, and I think Lane covered everything beautifully, but I'm going to add some of my own spin to I think each of those areas. Well, number one is you might think, well, why would I need buyer representation? Why would I need a Sackin-Stone representative? And obviously, if we're getting compensated somehow from the builder, is that affecting what I pay? The answer on that one is absolutely not. Think of buying a new home as going to a travel agent. Back in the day, and there still are travel agents, you go to the travel agent, you're not going to pay any more for that trip than you would if you booked it all yourself. But the travel agent has expertise. They have nuances. They have ways that they can package everything up and add value to, and they're getting compensated by the airlines, by the hotels, and so forth. And the hotels, the airlines are happy to pay that fee because it's then an area they don't have to deal with, because they have an expert that's putting everything together and watching out for the client. That's exactly how a new home build goes. The builders are thrilled to, most instances, to pay a referral fee to a broker, an agent that is going to represent their buyer, because they know that we have the expertise, we have the skill to help move the transaction along, help the buyer stay excited, help explain question marks that they might have. So that's, I want to get that out of the way right off the bat. But Elaine's point is very key. Do not go to the model homes and sign anything. If you're thinking about a new home builds, call your Sackin-Stone representative. Let them know what you're thinking about. We also will be able to, of course, if you're selling something first, be able to give you an idea of the net equity that you're going to be getting out of your current home. That's the second point I want to make. Some of the builders, unlike the resellers, are going to perhaps take a contingent offer and allow you to have a little bit of time to sell your home. They may or may not have a realtor that they would recommend to you, but if you go in already with your realtor in play, and we have a great reputation throughout Orange County, and many of the builders know who we are, we're going to make sure that you're in a much better position to get your I'm going to say offer accepted, because with builders you do pay their price, but to be able to put together a transaction. Second, going on to the upgrades, as Lane mentioned, absolutely, you're going to have the ability to purchase upgrades through the builder. They'll often have a design center, which will be a specific home that's set up and have all the shutters, the floors, the cabinet upgrades, et cetera, available to you. You need to weigh out the benefits and the costs, because you're going to be paying retail plus when you go through the builder, but you're also going to get the benefit of a one-stop shopping. You may be getting credits back, as Lane said, from the lender. So you want to carefully look at the cost-benefit analysis of that. If you're the creative type that says, you know what, I've got a designer, or I want to go outside the grid looking for this carpet or that flooring or whatnot, then you may want to go ahead and just take the basic, the basic house. And if you are getting some benefits from the lender, maybe you use that to pay down your mortgage interest rate or something like that. Look at your options with any credits that you might be getting, and don't ever feel shoehorned into what they may suggest, because oftentimes they'll have a track that they want you to go down, but it's not required that you are to do that. And the third thing is along with these things, you do need to have some vision, and you do need to realize, for example, okay, if I get a backyard that's just dirt, how much is it going to cost me to finish off that backyard? And the same thing with your upgrades interior wise. Oftentimes the appliances that come with the house, you could be spending $1.5 million on a tract house or a new tract home build subdivision, and they do put in the cheapest of the cheap appliances and so forth. So take a look at all those things and consider upgrades. And I know I've been talking a little bit now, and there's a third topic that we want to talk about, and that is, when you are looking to buy, you're weighing out, do I buy a resale or do I buy a brand new home? Okay, the new homes have appeal, but there's always things that we look at, and that's where Lane, Philip, and I and our team come into play, is to have that dialogue with our clients to help you kind of do an A/B analysis.
Yes, and I want to talk about a couple things there, because you brought up some really good points. Yes, a lot of new home builders are going to accept contingent offers, but they're only going to be accepting contingent offers for the ones I've seen, because the marketplace is very competitive right now for buyers. If you have a later phase, like the ones I was mentioning in Huntington Beach through Shea, those are going to be released in the summer. They're going to accept a contingent offer for those ones. Now, but you still have to get your house sold within a couple months, or basically 60 days, I guess. And so if they're not gonna be ready until the summer, you might either have to do a rent back for your house that you own, or you have to find temporary housing. And that's also assuming that the builder's gonna be finished on time. Any of the ones that are ready to move in now, they're probably not gonna accept a contingent offer in this marketplace. So that also brings us up to a point as far as timing is concerned. So when we're talking about timing in the contract for a new home build, they're gonna say that they're not responsible for any of the dates as far as when things are gonna be finished, because they know that a lot of times it might not finish online or on time, and maybe there's some weather delays, maybe somebody gets sick as far as the contract is concerned, and it gets delayed a little bit. So they're trying to take the responsibility away from them. However, we have been in cases where clearly it was the builder's fault as far as timing, and I've had clients in temporary housing where we were able to negotiate the builder to pay for 1 month or 2 months of the temporary housing. So make sure, again, that's the importance of having buyer representation for yourself, because the builders aren't going to tell you that they're going to allow that. And so we fight in your corner to make sure that if you are at a loss as far as timing is concerned, or you're in some sort of temporary housing and they didn't meet any of the timing restraints, and even though they took themselves out of it in the contract, we're still going to be able to fight and get you a little bit there too. One thing I also want to mention as far as new home builders, it's along the lines of appreciation. So we've had clients that have bought new home builds and then maybe sold 2 years down the road. And I will say new home builds aren't appreciating as quickly 2 years down the road or so. And the reason why, one, if you're looking for a new home build or you're looking for a newer home, you're going to have buyers that are willing to maybe pay just a little bit more to get something brand new as opposed to something that's 2 years old. So the buyer pool kind of goes down on a two-year-old home a little bit because there might be, if I pay 25,000 or 30,000 more, I actually get a brand new home as opposed to one that's 2 years old. So these new homes have a little bit of that new car feel to where it maybe goes down just a little bit, or maybe doesn't appreciate at all for a couple of years when you drive it off the lot type of thing, where as opposed to maybe an older home. So if you are purchasing a new home and you're looking at it as far as an investment, you have to be willing to either rent it out or hold on to it for a little bit longer, because you are going to have buyers after 2 years that are willing to pay maybe a little bit of a premium for a brand new home as opposed to a 2-year-old home.
I think Lane's right on. So if you're considering a brand new home, you want to really look at your job situation. Is a transfer possible in the works or something? You want to make sure that you're probably going to be set for 5 years or so. And most people, I think, don't go into a home purchase thinking they're going to move in 2 years, but we do often see people get transferred in life. Things can change. So I think that's an excellent point, Lane. And I was actually going to bring up something along those exact same lines. When you're thinking about purchasing, and tying right into what Lane said, you want that newness, the excitement of a brand new home. You've got to remember, do you have the wherewithal to be, living with dirt for up to 6 months? These oftentimes have HOAs. Your landscaping is going to have to get approved. It's not a matter of you just move in and you put in your brand new yard. The same thing with some of your improvements, or you want to come in and change out some of the builder things. Your kitchen, your bathrooms may be in a little bit of upheaval. You have to determine, do you have the wherewithal for that, especially given these days where so much of our time is now spent at home versus, going to the office for 8, 10, 12 hours a day and then coming home and the workers are gone and you're okay. We've got to think about our threshold for that. And on those same lines, maybe what you do as a purchaser, if you're craving that new home feel, is look for that seller who is having to move after a couple years. And we get something that's just a couple years old and it does feel like a new home. And maybe winner chicken dinner, the upgrades they've chosen, the way they've done the backyard, is in line with your aesthetic and your taste. And then you can get a finished product.
And chances are you're getting the home at a price of what the seller paid 2 years ago as well.
Exactly.
So yeah, you're not overpaying, you're not paying a premium on something that's brand new. But like Scott said, that the feeling and the look of it is exactly what they're doing today anyways.
Right on. And I think, again, in closing, understanding this full loop, as Lane said, I think it's to understand the upgrades that you put in. If you were to buy brand new and you did have to sell, you're not going to get dollar for dollar most likely out of those. You'll get a package kind of deal for your house, so to speak, but it's not where you can just say, well, I've put in $60,000 in upgrades, and believe you me, it adds up very quickly. I've been there once before, in Huntington Beach. So a lot of exciting things to think about. And again, I think it comes back full circle. Get the conversation started with the Sackin-Stone team before you find yourself kind of in deep water and kind of pull up the boots. We're always here to help you at the beginning, weigh out all the options in any direction that you want to go.
That's exactly right. And Scott, I don't know how we do it, but every week we seem to manage to get that 30-minute mark right on the dot. And that's what we're approaching right now. So as always, thank you so much for watching our SNL show. I say it every week, but we love doing these. We enjoy doing them. I don't care if there's 1 viewer, 0 viewers, or 100. We're going to continue to do them. And if you have any questions that you might want us to answer on a future show, please leave that in the comments box. If we said something that either you or somebody you know might find value, please share that with them or on your page. As always, spreading the word and spreading the love is the best benefit and help to us and to others around that might find value for any of the topics that we're discussing.
Absolutely. And even though we sometimes don't have that many viewers on the call itself, we're super excited that these have a shelf life. We get views over the weekend and in the future, so we know they have value. And I want to give a big shout out to our producer and Sackin-Stone team marketing director, Stipa Lasik. He's behind the scenes making sure that Lane and I look good every week, and we've got our headings to talk about and so forth. And on that note, our next 2 weeks are going to be jam-packed with topics that are right now current for buyers and sellers, and some tips for living and making the most out of your home right now, since we're spending so much time there. So at 29 minutes and 26 seconds, I want to say, don't miss the next couple weeks. We look forward to seeing you then. And thanks so much for watching today. See ya.